Well, greetings, greetings, greetings to everyone. We want to say good morning. We're excited about being here. We hope you are. We thank each and every one of you that have joined in today to make this chat a better chat. And I say, welcome from LKM Kingdom Living, Leslie's Lessons Learned. And on behalf of Leslie's Lessons Learned, we say welcome. I'm so excited about my guests that are here. But one thing I want you to do while I'm thinking about it, my grandson always reminds me, please like, share, and subscribe. So I want to put that out there while I'm thinking about it right there. So are you having problems? I do have one clip I want to show. Are you having problems with forgiving somebody in your family? Are you having problems with forgiving someone on your job? Are you having problems forgiving an old classmate or someone on the playground? Are you having problems you're holding on to things that you haven't let go because maybe you didn't understand the other person, or maybe you didn't understand what they were going through? So as we go forth this morning, I just want you to take a moment and think about it. Is there some unforgiveness that's holding you hostage, that's keeping you from going forth because you haven't learned how to let it go? So before we get started, I thank my guests for being here. I want to play this short clip now. I tried to clean it up, not the words or anything like that, but I should have sent it to Mike, but I tried to do it on my own. But I do want to play this little clip real quick um, about forgiveness.
When we have to make peace with our past, because it's going to be hard to make destiny moves when historical pain and regret are your counselors. So you can't move forward without first booking a session with your history and your regret, because they've been the most dominant voice in your life. We have to literally make a peace treaty with our past. And what is a peace treaty? It is an agreement between two or more hostile parties which have formally ended a state of war between themselves. Our mind, our past, and our decisions are hostile towards the future version of ourselves. Yes, once we repent and confess, God forgives us, but do you forgive you? How about forgive yourself for all the times you made decisions in ignorance? Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for overlooking the red flags. Forgive yourself for falling for somebody who had no intentions of catching you. Forgive yourself for not listening to wisdom's plea, because our past is supposed to be a place of reference, not our place of residence. And here's the danger: when we don't make peace with our past, we risk standing before our fights on today exhausted, because we're still fighting the fights from yesterday. So this is what I do that helps me. I process the voices. The voice of guilt hands you regret due to an action. The voice of shame hands you a label due to an action. You are a horrible person. You are a failure. But the voice of conviction is God giving you a reminder that you've been made for more. There comes a time.
So I thought that was pretty good information. And since we're talking today about going further, sorry, something came up, going further in our decision making, I'm going to call it. As I think about it, and a lot of times it's how we think about ourselves or how we feel about ourselves that keeps us hung up. And as I thought about it, and I thought about this, how many of you looked in the mirror and you said to yourself, is life worth living? And you know what I thought about it today? Sometimes we're caught between a rock and a hard place because we can't forgive. So it makes us hard, it makes it hard for us to be able to see past where we are in order to go where we need to go. So if you're looking in the mirror today and you're wondering, is life worth living? Well, we're here to let you know life is. Things come up, things happen. Sometimes it's tragedy. Sometimes you can't get past the past, get past that place of losing a loved one. Whatever it is, I promise you, if you're still here, that there's a purpose for you being here. And you've got to find a way to work through that. Yes, pain sometimes take time. Sometimes it takes a moment to understand. And you know what a lot of times we do? We come in agreement with that pain. So when we come in agreement with that pain, it makes it hard for us to move past the pain. We got to make agreement with forgiveness and not the pain. Yes, you're going to go through. Yes, things is going to happen. But if you don't make agreement with coming through, forgiving, and going on, you're going to be stuck in that place. And in that place, sometimes you'll end up dying, maybe not physically, but spiritually. So I just wanted to say that. Let me say this: you are unique and you are beautiful, and you have been created by the Creator, which is Yahweh, God. And because you have the plan for your life is a whole lot bigger than who you are and where you are. So without on further ado, let me introduce, or let them introduce themselves. They're really not any strangers, and they're not really guests. Um, they come on all the time, and I appreciate them. Last week, Mike was setting up. I said, Mike, you coming on? He's like, no, ma'am. So I had to be real tender this week with asking him about coming on, but I appreciate him coming on. And then we have my nephew, Rick. He's on today, and he's another one I just can pull in at any time. And he's willing, and him and Tiffany are willing at any time to come on. So I want to welcome you guys, but I want you to take a moment and say hello, greet the people, and tell them about your ministry. We can start with the Johnsons.
Good.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm trying
Hello,
to.
hello, hello. I am Alicia Johnson, the creator of the 1212 community. And we're dedicated to helping everyone who chooses to change their life, like one journal at a time, one forgiveness piece at a time, and 3 hours at a time, understanding that we are here to live 12 hours for God and 12 hours for man. And this is.
And I'm the other half of all of that. Um, I can honestly say, when you start looking at titles, I mean, there's so many titles I can put on myself and what we do. But I think, for me, this morning and where I am right at this moment, I think the title is just I'm a lesson in forgiveness just by itself, a personal lesson. Everything that we're dealing with right now, in our lives, and everything that we've dealt with in the past, it has been just a big lesson in forgiveness. And that's me. My name is Mike Cullen, or Mike Cullen Johnson, as many know. And I'm Alicia's husband, of course. And yeah, that's it. That is it.
All right, Rick.
Good morning. Good morning. So I'm a little out of place right now because there's a thing that I normally do that I'm used to doing. So I'm Rick, and we're Team Child. So I'm the other half, not the better half, but the other half of Team Child. So good morning, everyone. I'm a health renewal coach, or actually, my wife and I were health renewal coaches, and we teach the power of choice, which starts with commitment, consistency, and community. Those things are vital in order for you long term to gain whole body wellness. So forgiveness is a main component of that when you really stop and think about it. And for me, it was unknowing unforgiveness that allowed me to be able to be at the place that I'm at right now. And it involved internal work, the internal work that unearthed a lot of different things that has allowed me to be able to heal and continue to heal. And but you don't realize that as you're going through, as we double words now, living life, as we go through these things, we don't understand that. Sometimes we don't have a name for it. We just go through it and then we deal with it. So that's the revelation and the information that God has given me, definitely over the last 6 years, that has allowed me to be able to grow, to be a better man, to be a better husband, and to be a better father, brother, and friend, but it's still a work in progress.
Amen. And before we get started, I said something last week, and I just want everybody to know that last week I was saying that Alicia tricked me. She didn't trick me. I was saying she tricked me to start this live. She didn't trick me. I was teasing Alicia. Okay. So I wanted to put that out there. She's not a trickster. Okay. And if she is, I don't know that part of her. So I just wanted to put that out there before we get started. So we're going to have a conversation today. And Rick was talking about men. And he was talking about the aspect of men and forgiveness, how it looks different than for women. And I'm gonna let him go ahead and get started, and we're gonna chime in, especially Mike. Maybe me and Alicia will listen and let you two conversate about this conversation, because it's a well-needed one. It's not the first time we've had this conversation, but we're going to take it in a different direction. So before I do that, let me have my little commercial moment. Today I am drinking from Dare to Dream mug, which is Cynthia Noel, and she has the community Dare to Dream. She also has what's that? Bedtime stories, where she tells a story we're only about 10, 15 minutes maybe. She tells a story at night to kind of help you to relax, so that while you're sleeping at night, you can dream. So I just want to give a shout out to her today as we continue to go forth in this conversation. Okay, Rick.
Well, thank you, Aniel. And I guess I might as well do my advertisement. I'm drinking from Mason Jar with lemon water. Country, Mike. This is what we do in the country. So we do have good glasses, but like I said, I just love going back, and health from the nutrition standpoint is very key for me. I think it has really helped strengthen everything else in my life. So one of the things that we were talking about, as far as from a man's perspective, so don't get me wrong, it's coming from a man's perspective, but it's for women also. It's going to benefit women also. So the women that's on the chat that's listening to this, please take your notes, chime in, because these are the things that you're going to hear from men, and some of the things you may not hear from men. Okay, you may feel it, see it, and don't understand what it is. And I believe that God has put me in this place to inspire, to bring those things to point. So for me, when this journey started, there were things that I didn't know that were going on within inside of me. It was unearthed because I started the inner work. The inner work was being a natural introvert, understanding that's who I was. When I say introvert, a lot of people say you're quiet, you don't talk a lot, you don't engage, you don't do a lot of these things. So if you hear these things, you'll live in these things, and you'll go back to that's what you do, and don't understand that there's so much more to you in order for you to become whole. God created so many things within us that if we learn those things through the tools that he presents for us, that's where the growth comes. That's where the forgiveness comes. And I didn't know I had some forgiveness work to do, but it traveled with me, and it dictated things through my life that I didn't realize until the inner work started. So one of the things that was unearthed was I had, at the age of 8, an incident that I believe froze and stayed with me. And the realization that came was I had an 8-year-old traveling with me through my journey, and I had to babysit this 8-year-old. Okay. Right now I'm at the age of 60. So now I'm babysitting this 8-year-old, and the 8-year-old is the emotions that pop up in different situations that may allow me not to forgive or be forgiven. So one of the things that happened at that stage in my life that I didn't realize was I had an incident with my stepfather. And my stepfather, he was a mechanic. He was a great mechanic, and he did work at home. So one day I was working with him, and he asked me for a tool, and I gave him the wrong tool. And instead of him correcting me with love and correcting me and showing me the right way, he cursed me up one side and down the other. And being an introvert naturally already, not understanding who I am at that age, it more or less put me back further, where I didn't want to be a leader, where I didn't want to step forward, where I didn't want to be decisive, where I didn't want to do some of the things that as a young man growing up would allow me to be the best version of who God created me to be. So when that happened and I realized that, one of the things that I had to do was, one, forgive him. And when I forgave him, the only reason that happened was because I knew his history. He was illiterate. He didn't have a father in his life that could guide him and show him the right way when he did something wrong. So understanding that history allowed me to be able to say, look, I have to forgive him, because it's about letting go. It's two things: letting go and history, their history and your history. So when I understood that, it allowed me to be able to say, okay. And by this time, when all of this came, he had passed and gone away. So don't get me wrong, you can still forgive, even if that person is not there. Because one of the things you don't realize is, like I said earlier, it traveled with me. And I didn't know it was traveling with me, but it dictated the things that I did. So when that forgiveness happened, when I let go and when I understood the history, what it did was it allowed me to say, look, you have some more forgiveness to do. You have someone that and the person that needed it was my oldest daughter. So with me forgiving my stepfather, it allowed me to go to my oldest daughter and ask for forgiveness. And I had the discussion with her. And the thing that I realized, and people, this is a key, when you think about a situation and you become emotional, it's still inside you. It's still riding with you. And when I talked about that situation with my stepfather, whether it was with my oldest daughter, or whether it was with my mother and sister, I broke down, and the first thing that I said to them when I broke down was, I'm almost 60. Why am I crying about this? And my sister said something to me that released me. She said, because you hadn't healed yet. That's why you're crying. You hadn't healed yet. And when she said that, I really understood that how important internal work was, how deep I had to go spiritually, mentally, and physically. All of those things have to happen. What my wife and I do is called Health Renewal. And it's about a mindset. It's about an understanding of self. And it's spiritual health, it's mental health, and it's physical health. But the spiritual health is that glue. It's that glue for the mental and the physical. And all those things have to be in harmony. I don't believe in balance. I believe in harmony. And where I'm at right now, my inner peace and my harmony is at its utmost. Now, forgiveness is continuous. It's continuous. Don't get me wrong. You can forgive and you can forget to some point, but it's going to be continuous, because there's going to be things that you don't do that you need to be forgiven or you need to forgive. There's going to be things that you encounter that forgiveness is going to be involved. And because of God's love, we're supposed to forgive straight without knowing a history, without knowing, what the reason was. But the other part that comes down and that I had to understand was it was affecting my health, because I'm carrying this load. Okay. And as an internal thinker, if it's a situation that is new and fresh, it's going to go on replay. It's going to be in your head. It's going to cause, and people don't understand, if you stand in here and somebody says boo, your body reacts to it. And your body goes through all of these things. Your heart rate goes up, your blood starts to move. And just think about these things. If you're holding on to something that against a person, you're physically breaking down, you're mentally weakening, and your spirit is damaged. Because if you're spiritually tight, then those things shouldn't affect you. But again, like I said, for me, it was unknowing forgiveness. And then doing the internal work, it allowed me to be able to understand that, and being part of, the 1212 community and being a part of other processes allowed me to gain the tools, gain the understanding, and really go deep into myself. As I said before, I'm a natural introvert, but I learned to be an extrovert because God put it in me. And I didn't settle on my natural. I didn't settle on the default. I went outside of my comfort zone. But going outside of my comfort zone allowed me to forgive and be forgiven. Because again, you have to understand what's going on inside of you. And that's for men. Men don't understand, a lot of men, you heard me say earlier, I cry. I'll cry anywhere. And it doesn't matter to me what you think, because I'm a man. And that's what God created us to do. He created us to be decisive. He created us to be mature. He created us to be strong. He created us to be consistent. And this is the work that I want men to be able to understand that's going to benefit women. So when I speak from a man's perspective, it's not just for men, it's for women also. And on any platform, whether we're speaking spiritual, mental, or physical. So that was the internal work. And there's so much more, but these are some of the things, some of the revelations, and some of the information that God has given me just over this short period of time that has put me, in a place. Because when people see my growth, they see the outside, but they do not understand the inside. There's so much that has changed inside of me to be a better version of who you see right now. And it's still a continued work. I'm not finished. I'm still moving. But the other thing is, I'm going to speak up. I'm going to live in real time, and I'm not going to keep it in my head, because when God blesses you, you don't keep it to yourself. I don't know. I mean, I could go on. You already know I can go. I'm an introvert that loves to talk. So
You got to balance. That's all that means. You got to balance and be in both. Mike, I don't know if you want to chime in here. I know Alicia does, but Mike, I don't know if you want to chime in, and because
So
you have a history. Well, we all have a history,
yeah,
but you can relate to what he's talking about.
yeah, for me it was, we talk about daddy issues, so for me it was similar, but slightly different in the fact that, I didn't know my dad growing up. I didn't know who he was. We could be in the same room and I wouldn't even know. And I got to the point where I was probably in my mid to late 30s, where I had just got so fed up with, I can't say life, but it was just, I guess, the situation of not knowing my dad, that I had just got to a breaking point where, I started to research. I started to find out. I think I'd asked my mom the name and different things like that, and I just started to do some research. Found out that he lived like in my area, in the same area, all my life. When I was a kid, he was probably, I lived in the DC area when I was a kid. He was probably no more than 10 minutes away from me. So I did all the research, found out who he was, met him, and started to spend time with him. And there was a release, I guess a release that came about that just made everything a lot lighter for me. And I think during that process, it was forgiveness as well, because when I met him, I I saw myself, and I think the greatest thing that came from that is not that I met him. Is for me, it was just really the fact that I was able to, I guess, just be comfortable with who I was at that point, because I had lived so long not really knowing who I was, of course, where I came from, when I was a kid, right out of high school, I got involved in alcohol and drinking and just doing a lot of things I shouldn't have been doing. And I found out later in life that it was really just because of all of the anger that I had inside. It wasn't, and I guess it was. It was really directed at someone that I didn't know, if you will. And a lot of that, and I was talking to Alicia not too long ago. With my mom, a lot of that was with probably directed towards my mother, although she was there and she was loving and she was providing everything that my dad wasn't. There was still a part that was, unforgiving towards her. And that's something I'm still dealing with and working through right now. The whole thing with my dad, he's lived his entire life. He has passed on. And that chapter of my life is, closed at the moment. Closed until I
I was like,
until I meet him again. But
at the moment.
but it was a lesson, and looking back, it was a great lesson because now I understand, all of the stuff that Alicia and I went through in marriage. It was really the same thing, and I had to learn through the process of, forgiving my dad to forgive Alicia for all of the stuff that, was going on with us. So like I said, when I introduced myself, forgiveness is like my life lesson. We all deal with it. We all work with it. But it is like, I'm reading a book right now and it's talking about just being offended, and forgiveness goes hand in hand with that. A lot of times, if I was unable to forgive someone in my life, being offended came into play. And most times my natural reaction was to, well, okay, well, all right, and just not deal with it. I just close that chapter of my life completely and keep moving and keep going to doing different things, not realizing that at some point it's going to come back up in your life in emotions, illnesses, sicknesses, and all these other things. And it's very important to realize that, like Rick said, regardless of whether you're 8 or 80, you're going to deal with it. You're going to deal with it some shape, form, or fashion. It's going to come back into your life, and it's going to keep hitting you on the head until you deal with it. It's going to keep hitting you. So that's I think for me, that's one of the biggest things right now that I'm learning, I'm working with. Was diagnosed with cancer back in December, a lot of you know. And I'm working through this process and working through this cancer diagnosis, not necessarily looking at like the food I eat and stuff like that. I mean, although that's a big part of it. Everyone wants to look at, we weren't eating right, wasn't doing that. I was doing all that. I was exercising, personal trainer. I was doing all that stuff. For me, I now understand that everything that I'm dealing with the cancer diagnosis is because of all of the forgiveness. And it may not be just, 100% forgiveness, but it's a large part of it. So it's huge. This forgiveness work is huge, and I think, like I just said, you're gonna deal with it one way or the other. It's gonna come out in some shape, form, or fashion in your life, inside of you, or your being, or you're gonna actually sit down and start opening up those chapters of your life that you've walked past and didn't address. So.
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to let you guys continue, but I was looking. Thank you, everyone that's commenting. But my eye kind of got stuck on Karen's comment where she said, "Wow, that part, Mike. Maybe this is what was. Maybe this is what was going on. Oh, it disappeared. Maybe this is what was going on with my youngest son. It makes sense. So there's other comments. Tiffany, Rick's wife, said the transformation is real. Just comments in here that Karen also says the work is never done. I was supposed to see this today. Amen. And yeah, the work is not done until we begin to deal with ourselves and the things in our lives that we go around in a circle. It's a circle. You keep hitting up against that same wall until you realize most of the time we don't even take the time, like you said, we put it aside and keep going. We don't even take the time to figure out what's going on with us and why we do the things we do. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Tiffany said thank you for sharing that. It will affect your physical if not addressed, and that's so true. We know that's just one aspect of it, but I'm going to close my mouth. I don't know if you want to say anything, Alicia, but yeah, I'm going to sit back and go ahead.
Oh no, no, no. I'm good. I agree with everything that's being said. Forgiveness is an ongoing journey, and I think that it's very important. And I'm grateful that Mike and I are able to be a demonstration to our children, so that they don't have to extend their emotional baggage longer, carry it longer than they have to. I know that because of a lot of the things that we went through, it trickled down to our children, and they had their own set of anger issues. But because Mike and I were willing enough to heal in front of them, that they have done more in such a short amount of time as it relates to their forgiveness work, that it gives us great hope and great encouragement to know that they, even though they'll go through things, they have the skills, they have the tools that they need to move through. And in watching definitely our son move through his life circumstances, you don't, as a parent, want to clip their wings. You don't want to prevent them from learning their lessons. But it's very important that you become a living demonstration for what they can accomplish, but don't interrupt their process, but let them know what's available. And that's so humbling when we watch our son make decisions and then turn around, correct those decisions, and understand the process. So revelation, information without revelation is useless. Information with revelation without application is a special kind of stupid. So to be able to watch him with the information that we provide through our demonstration gives him the revelation to know that life can be different, and he has been applying it to make those changes in his life. So I think that as parents, we have and bear a huge responsibility as to the welfare of our children spiritually, mentally, and physically. Not to jump in front of a moving train, but to be a demonstration of what a healed life looks like. And I think that's one of the things that Mike and I had discussed, especially with his diagnosis. You want to forgive before you're forced to forgive. You want to forgive before life requires forgiveness. And that's one of the things that we're most grateful about, is that we are both going through this journey together, healed. Had this scenario happened 10, 15 years ago, this would have been disastrous, because the emotions would have been running high, the fear factor would have been running high, the anger issues, everything that God allowed us the opportunity to do before we get to see now the reason for it. So that's one of the reasons why I'm very big on radical obedience. When heaven requires you to do something, do it, because heaven is giving you enough time to rectify situations that need to be corrected before the next thing happens. And so, in hindsight, I now see and understand why the timer, if you will, was placed on the healing work that we needed to do, because we needed it for such a time as this. We needed to be healed and in a healthy place spiritually and mentally, so that physically we could get through it. And in looking back in hindsight, God's timing is perfect. Heaven had Mike and I heal so that Mike and I could get through the process of helping our son heal. And so we both needed to be on one accord to move him through the process. And about a month or so ago, it just broke me down, because our son came to me, and God is giving him revelations and everything, and he's had a great turning point in his life. And he's like, Mommy, he said God healed you and Daddy to help, because I that's what I tell you, and I'm like, well, Daddy and I had to come together so we can get you through. And my son was like, now you and Daddy got me through. Now me, you, Daddy, and now me, you, and Bria are gonna get Daddy through. So that God did everything in the right time so that we will all be healed enough to carry each other through. So we have to understand that we are all here for definite reasons. And a lot of times, unforgiveness blocks us from understanding our real assignments. And the world keeps us also from understanding our real assignments, because the world keeps us looking for the shiny things. The world keeps us looking for the big things. And because we are at this place now where this right now, we're in the fight for our life. This is a huge thing. But if you put it in the grand scheme of things as it relates to the world, a lot of people miss opportunities to do the smaller things that are going to have make the biggest impact when the big things do happen. And so it is so important that you pay attention to the little things that heaven gives you to do, because eventually over time it's going to all make sense. So that's what I have.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. That's good. And Matthew's, the 6th chapter, it says, God is not forgiving our sins if we do not forgive those who sin against us. And I just wanted to put that out there because we're talking about forgiving others this morning, and that's a powerful thing. I'm not gonna say too much more, but one of the things that I think that we do as parents, we do everything in secret. They see us fight openly, but the healing process, they just notice one day we're healed. Everything is done secretly, you know. So it's very vitally important that we are open. That's a vital important that we are open. If your communications with your children wasn't open, they would never be at the place they are to understand what it means. So I'm going to go, Rick. I know you have, or Mike. I know either one of you.
And it's just real quick. What you just said, and what Alicia said, it reminds me that our life is like a movie, and if we're passing along a incomplete movie to our kids, where they can see bits and pieces of it, but they don't see the entire movie, it does them no good. It does them absolutely no good. So in our case, if our kids didn't know, I mean, they know everything about. I mean, they know everything about our situation. It's not pretty, but on the flip side, they're able to take that, as difficult as it is, and use it in their lives, and they see and they understand every piece and part, and they saw it from the beginning. So I think it's important that, and I'm not saying you know tell your kids, every dirty detail of, what has happened in your life. But it's important that you go through those different pieces so they understand the stages. Because I mean, if we were just to pop up one day in in to our kids and be like lovey dovey and everything's fine, they be like, what the and then everything else is behind closed doors, it would be confusing to them. But for us now, I mean, our kids have seen every piece of this. So I think it's very key, and what you said and what Alicia was saying, that you do share those details, and maybe I shouldn't say share those details, but give those lessons. You know, pass along each of the lessons. And for each of the stages, because if we look at our situation, this has been stages. I mean, we're talking over 10 years of different things. So our kids looked at us 10 years ago, and
That's longer than that.
longer than that. Yeah, so we've probably been three or four
We've
different
been
people
we've been
in our
dysfunctional
lives.
longer than we've been functional. We were
Yeah.
dysfunctional much longer than we were functional.
Yeah.
But God is the redeemer of time, so that's what makes it better. So it doesn't matter how long you've been in the dysfunction. God will give you back everything that you thought that you lost. And there is a question in the chat.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Put it on the table so it could be answered. Just let you have it. It just went away.
Yeah, it's how do we help our children forgive? I know it's ultimately their choice, but how do we aid or guide them through the process? You want to take that one, or you want me to,
Um,
or Rick or Leslie?
I think it's how do we help? I think it's part of what I said. It's
Experience
yeah,
going through, walking it out.
yeah.
And
I think forgiveness, a big part of forgiveness, like Rick was saying, is learning to forgive yourself, addressing things versus letting things go. If you look at the world right now, I see a lot of kids that may get offended by certain situations and move on, like I say, to different things and not forgiving. I mean, there's so many people incarcerated today. There's so many people dying today. There's so many people just mentally ill today because they haven't used that one key that will help them unlock the doors in other parts of their lives, and it's the key of forgiveness. So for kids, I think really just sharing those deep, dark, and sometimes dark lessons that you have as an adult, with kids, just sharing with them that, forgiveness is that key that will make the rest of their lives easier. Because if you carry, like for me, like for Rick, for most of us, if you carry that thing from your 20s into your 30s, it's going to go into your 40s. It's going to keep going until you use the right key. And like I say, it's forgiveness.
So we're not just going to tell them you got to forgive without having a demonstration of what forgiveness is.
no,
Yeah, you got, like I
you
said,
can't.
you have to give them that entire lesson, that movie.
So I want to read this, but I do want Rick to continue because that's good. A movie, yeah, that's good. But I'm looking at this and it says forgiveness requires nothing from a person where I'm sorry. Oh yeah, forgiveness requires nothing from a person where forgiving does. And then it says talks about the reconciliation. Reconciliation requires repentance from offenders, and even then, he or she does not dictate their theme or the term of reconciliation. So what it's talking about is saying, what's the difference between the two? That you can forgiveness requires nothing from a person where forgiving, where reconciliation requires repentance. And I think that that's a good point right there. Repentance from what? From offenders. And even then, he or she does not dictate the terms of reconciliation. So I was just looking at that, and I think that we have to understand that. Even though we want the other person to forgive us, and we go and say, forgive us, it doesn't require that. It requires that our hearts.
Yeah.
And if I can chime in
Yeah.
for a second, as it relates to like the parenting piece and as it relates to like the relationship piece, one of the things that I had to learn, and I teach the life path year cycle work, and every person has their own life path, their own personality. And I had to learn like our son is like a very rigid number. He's a very, black and white person. And so you really can't, like, you want to, as a parent, to give them examples and to give them parables and to share stories with them so that the light bulb will go off. And it's like, oh, yes, thanks for that story, Mom. I get it. My son was not going to get it in that way. And so as a parent, I had to understand that his way of learning is to go through. His path is one of breakthrough. Like, he literally has to hit the wall several times and then break through it on his own. So every story, it doesn't matter. Mike and I, we have tried to tell him time after Mike would tell him his stories. I would tell him my stories. He would see things until he would see it for himself. Yeah. It didn't matter. Our daughter, on the other hand, she's a balanced. She's more gentle, more balanced, and so we can give her wise counsel. And she'll take it and she'll like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And she's not going to do it. Like, she will use that. But every child has its own unique way of demonstrating the lessons that you teach. So every child is individual. So it's not a cookie cutter approach to demonstrating forgiveness. You demonstrate it and allow them to process it in the way that they need to.
Yeah, I just quickly, and I know Rick definitely wants to cut in here. Mm-hmm. I think just what Alicia said, because I was that type of learner myself. I think it's still important that you share that story because it's a reference, mm-hmm. For our son. Although he may not have taken that and said, okay, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that. He was able to, as he went through his life journey, he was able to look at it and say, oh, okay, they told me this. Oh, they told me
that's
that was
what that
happen.
meant. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So at some point, it's like, okay, let me look at this. Let me read this book. Mm-hmm. It's like having a manual and saying, nah, I'm not going to throw that to the side. Let me do it myself. And then halfway through, you get together and things aren't, you find out it's not working the way it's supposed to be work. Then you say, well, okay, let me do it. Let me look at the manual. Mm-hmm. So you have to have that manual, I think, still. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm just thinking, we share with them that experience or that movie, that lesson, because at some point it's going to dawn on him that, oh, they told me that.
Oh, that's what they were talking about. Oh okay.
Those old moments.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because he'll bring stuff up like it's his idea. Like, Mom, I just thought about, really?
Yeah, we told you that.
Yeah, okay, that's all right. Good job. Yeah, so.
Yep. Sorry, Rick.
Go ahead, Rick.
Oh, no, y'all are good because I'm taking notes and so many things are coming, out of this that is more discussion. So I'm going to jump on the one thing that you were talking about, Alicia, as far as the life path. That was a game changer for Tiff and I as we raised Cam, knowing his life path and understanding that, because now naturally we know what he's doing is natural. Mm-hmm. And because of how we were raised, we were taking that and we were negating his natural. Mm. Now that we understand that, we can help him to navigate that without shutting him down, and then him having to do the rework. Because there's a saying that I love and I live on it by Frederick Douglass. It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men.
Mm-hmm.
And our children learn from us by what we do, by what they see, more than what we tell them.
Mm.
And the other thing with me being a Life Path 5, I understand their breakthrough. You know, one of the things that I used to do Christmas was I'd get a toy or whatever it was, because I'm technical, I would put it together without the instructions. And then once you put it together, you may realize a piece or two is missing, but you make it work. So that's how I am in life. I have to go through some things in order to understand it. You can tell me 1,000 times. I thank God for GPS, because unless I go a place, I gotta rework in my mind. Am I going the right way? And those are just understanding yourself. So the other thing was, when we go back to our children, when when I went to my oldest daughter and I asked for forgiveness and we had a discussion and we talked, what I noticed after the fact was she started to blossom because of what was going on with me that I didn't understand, but I got the revelation and the understanding that what I had to do. And when I talked to her, I saw her it released her. So we have to realize that the things that we're not doing, it does affect others around us, whether we know it or not. And when we gain that information, like you said, Alicia, having that understanding, that revelation, but in that information and not doing anything with it is a disservice. Once then it's time to share it. It's time to show up, and it's time to live it. And that's the thing that I try to do each and every day. Each and every day, God gives us a new day to get it right. A new day to get it right. And I'm gonna speak to what Karen was saying with her son. Her son probably doesn't understand, or maybe because we all continue. Life doesn't stop because things happen. We keep moving, we keep learning, we keep growing, we keep supporting, we keep doing all these things. And then we don't understand, sometimes it may affect, our spiritual or mental or physical in some form or fashion. So understanding maybe one of the things I know, that when I'm in a group of men and we're talking, what the common denominator always comes, and I've been in a lot of groups, is that a lot of us didn't have our fathers. Maybe we had stepfathers, maybe had surrogates in some form of fashion, but our real fathers. So even in this discussion, what I realized was that I speak about my stepfather, but my real father, who wasn't a part of my life, and wasn't there was an issue there for me, because now I'm looking at the other side of my family, why they don't want me, why they're not connecting with me, why haven't they gotten me, why haven't they come see me, but I'm still that young man going through life, doing the things that a young man does, but you still got that peace in you and that part. So when I went at the age of 19, I was going into the military. I kept hearing about my stepfather. People would see me. They were like, you look like him. You look like him. I look like my mother, but that's another story. But I would hear those things. So the curiosity was there. So I finally said, look, I'm getting ready to go into the military. I need to go see this man. I need to go see the other side of my family. I make that effort. I drive down to Louisa, Mike, and I go down there and I meet him. Well, actually, I meet his wife and my youngest brother. And I could have dropped to the floor because my youngest brother looked just like me. He was just shorter. Look just like me. When you see some, you can hear people say you look like somebody, but when you see somebody that looks like you, it's like an eerie feeling.
Yep.
But what I realized was that I wanted to know my real father. I wanted to be a part of my real father's life in that side. But what God told me was, and this is for men, you're pulled out of a situation for a reason, whether you understand it or know it or not. Again, I'm here because of the success my mother had, what she went through. People think success is external. It's the things that we have, the things that we achieve, but it's the things that we go through. It's the things that we get through. All of what my mother went through, because I know her history, should have meant me not being here. And when I say not being here physically, but not being here to be able to be on this platform, to be able to share and understand who I am, and to be able to inspire other men and just anybody that wants to hear the story. Because again, like I said, when I'm in a room with other men, I hear the same similarities.
Mhm.
We didn't have our father. He wasn't there. I don't know why. I wonder. All of those things. So I have to have forgiveness for my real father who wasn't in my life, but I also have to thank God for him not being in my life because I know the history. I know what my youngest brother went through. I know what environment they were in. Would it have been conducive for me? Would it have been better for my mother? Would it have been better for anyone that has come in my life? No, because I saw the history. I saw the information. And now I know that sometimes we may want something, but it's not the best thing for us. And that was a blessing that I wasn't a part of my real father's life, because I don't believe that I would be the man that I am today. And I'm the man today because of my stepfather, regardless of the incident. He was a great provider. He was a hard worker. And I saw those things. So when I say our children learn from what we do, my stepfather never sat down and said, do this, do that. I just saw what he did. I saw how he lived, and I understood that. And I understood it in a way of what I didn't want to do. So we have all this information. And I had a host of uncles that spent time with me, never sat down and said, Rick, do this, do that. They just showed up. They loved their wives. They worked hard every day. They loved their children. And these are examples that we get that sometimes we overlook and don't think about. But again, when we go to the information that we have, whether it's our history or whether the things that we want to learn, because we talk about the life path, the year cycle, disc assessments, temperament tests, all of these things, these are things that I've used and utilized to understand who I am, and confirmation, because there's so much confirmation to go across to let me know, okay, you're going in the right direction. Because I've said this before, being a part of 1212 has given me the blueprint to be the best version of who God created me to be, to know that I'm going in the right direction, to know that why I do what I do. And if you, and this is the last thing I'll say, that for men that should empower them, is when you know who you are, then you can tell people who you are. When you don't know that, then you'll go for anything. People will tell you who you are. People will treat you who you are. And the other thing about forgiveness and saying you're sorry, it's like the nail in the board, in the boards. You can put a nail in the board, but once you take that nail out, there's still a hole there. And that's the same thing with forgiveness. Saying you're sorry. We tell our son this all the time. Stop saying you're sorry. Why are you saying you're sorry? Because you can say you're sorry and it just becomes a word. You can forgive and it just becomes a word. Why? Everybody's understanding of forgiveness or everybody's apology, requires something different. I can't go to my wife and say, hey, I'm just sorry, and then move on. She needs to know why I'm sorry and why I'm not going to do it again, and vice versa. So everybody has to understand that we can know the definition of words. We can understand that these words help. But if we're not giving people the information from our perspective and what they require, because there's another thing, that we all have game tape on everyone that's in our life. Anyone that's close to us, we have game tape. I already know what certain people are going to do, but our emotions jump in and don't allow us to look at that game tape. We just respond and react to whatever happens. And once you take the emotion out of it, you can navigate so much in life, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's understanding what you're going to do the next moment. But there's so many things in that, in going in. And when I say this, it's all the internal work that you have to do. If you just live in surface, then you're doing a disservice to what God has put in you. You have to go deep, spiritually, mentally, and physically.
Amen. That's good. I don't know if we can carry this. I was just looking at the calendar. I don't know if we can carry this conversation on next week, but I would love to continue. It's just so much great information that we need to get out there. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming on. And I don't know if you have any last minute words before we say goodbye.
For me, in closing, I just want to let people know that, like Mike and I, we had this discussion before. That think about everything that we've been able to accomplish in our dysfunction, in the unforgiveness, through the anger, through all of the emotions. How much greater, and we've done some pretty cool things together, um, in spite of the, all of the craziness. But now that we're working and walking through forgiveness, the blessings are now, a lot of times we attribute a lot of the things that we accomplish as the blessing. That's not the blessing. The blessing is above and beyond anything that you can think or imagine. Everything that we accomplish, we've accomplished because we could imagine it, we could see it. But when you're operating from a place of forgiveness, that's when you give heaven the license to work above and beyond anything that you can think or imagine. If you're operating in resentment and doubt and uncertainty, you're tying the hands of God and you're blocking heaven's ability to work above your imagination. So free yourself so that you can experience the fullness of what heaven wants to provide for you. And that's what where we are now. We like every day we see like miracles. Like, oh my God, did you see? Like Mike and I will be doing stuff together. Like, did you? What just happened? Did you like at the airport with the bass, the lady with the bass? Mike and I, we just look like it's the little things that you know that heaven's hands are all over it. And when you experience like those miraculous things together, you know that you're in step with heaven. So allow yourself to be a part of heaven's plan by giving God everything that heaven needs, which is forgiveness.
Amen. And we're going to end with that, but thank everybody for their comments. You're getting a lot of feedback, positive feedback. I want one thing that happened to me yesterday in my Sabbath, and we're doing this introspect. Is that Yahweh started dealing with me about me, but what he said was, "You're so concerned about what concerns you, you're forgetting about being concerned about what concerns me."
Mm.
When we're in unforgiveness, it's because we're concerned about what concerns us. And we're not giving Yahweh a chance to transform that we become in a place of being concerned about what concerns Him. Healing takes place when we not just say forgiveness, like you said, but that you understand that your life is compatible to what He has for you to do. So I just want to encourage everyone that, yeah, there's a lot. You can be unforgiving about a lot of things. You can be hurt about a lot of things. But unless you give it over and let it go through the process and become concerned with what does he says? I know the plan. What is he concerned about? He said, I already know the plans for your life. So we need to allow him to filtrate our spirits and our minds, that we can understand what concerns him about our lives and the things he's called us to do, that we can begin to operate differently. So this was very powerful. Thank you so much. And there's just so much still to be said in this topic. We'll see about next week. But we want to say to everybody out there that you don't just use this as information, but you apply it to your life. And that the children, that is so vitally important. We sometimes forget because we always think they're okay. that they are part of the process. So we have to begin to move and do things differently. So until we meet again, I want to say blessings to everybody. Have an amazing week. And if you have not started working on your unforgiveness, let this week be the first week that you begin to transform that unforgiveness, dropping that UN. That's all you got to do is drop that UN on unforgiveness so you can begin to forgive. We love you, but most of all, Yahweh loves you more. Until we meet again, have an amazing week.
Bye.